Hello, I'm Jean Pete, and I welcome you back to our show, Better Living. Better Living is brought to you by the Homestead Hope Foundation and is sponsored by Homestead Hospice, where commitment to education and premier hospice care helps patients and families through life's most important journey.
Thank you for joining me again today. We have all faced tough times throughout our lives. Some that we were able to handle and push through ourselves, and some where we may have needed a little help to navigate through. Today I bring you Diane Call, who is with Creative Therapy Services in Marietta, Georgia. And today we're going to talk about therapy, hypnotherapy, music therapy, empowering yourself, and using services like Diane's to help you navigate through your tough times. Is that about right, Diane?
That sounds good.
Okay.
That sounds very good.
Well, thank you so much for being with me today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
I'm looking forward to it. You know, I guess every generation probably says this, but for me, it feels like life is getting harder and harder. And I don't know. I don't know if it's just the two-parent working families, and it seems like there's a cost to absolutely everything nowadays that I think maybe 20, 50 years ago there wasn't. And so it seems like navigating through all by ourselves without ever having to reach out to somebody else to help us through the really tough times is getting harder and harder and harder. And we all should probably be thinking about how we can use experts to help us so that we can continue to live our best life ever. I mean, the show is called Better Living. So I'm excited that you're here so that we can help everyone navigate through their life in their tough spots and live their best life. So let's talk a little bit about you. Tell us how you got involved in this area. And I love that, I did read your questionnaire. I love that you talk about thinking outside the box with your therapy. And we'll get into some of my experiences and thoughts, but I'm so looking forward to hearing about your out-of-the-box techniques for helping people who are seeking help through therapy. So how did you get involved in this?
Boy, that's a really long story, and I'll try to keep it short. I started off as a music therapist, actually, and I still do music therapy, but that's where I started in the mental health profession. I've always had just a very powerful and personal experience with music, and when I saw how it can be used to help people to meet non-musical goals, basically, I thought, okay, that's for me. So I started doing that for about 10 years, decided I wanted some more skills, wanted to work with a larger group of people. So that's where I got my LPC, Licensed Professional Counseling. And I just love it. I consider the mental health field, it's constantly growing, expanding. There's always something new to learn, and that's what is exciting to me. There's the more traditional approach, which everybody who has a counseling license learns in school. But then there's all that great training you get outside of school.
Well, even just training in general, even if we're not talking about mental health, but just the way people learn. You had a little music in there. I've been commissioned at work to help us with our educational series. We're trying to put everything on videos so that our staff can access at any time, and we're not at the liberty of, is this person free, a module that they can listen to. And so Kelly and I spent, half the afternoon just listening to music, because I said, it's going to be so boring if all they do is listen to me talk for hours and hours on end. So I'm trying to think, how can I compare Infection Control with one of the Schoolhouse Rock tunes, you know?
Oh, I see. Yeah, so great. That's a great idea.
I love what you're talking about with music therapy, because for me, it seems like you add something with a rhythm, something with a beat, you automatically feel better and more positive about going through the learning that you have to do in order to get to the next level.
And you know what's great about that is music engages the whole brain. It just doesn't engage the right brain, which is our emotional brain, where creativity is. It also engages the left brain, and it bridges that gap, which is why I think it really helps with learning.
So what kinds of music therapy? Because you hear music therapy, it seems like such a vague term. So how do you use music therapy to help people who come to see you for therapeutic reasons, for mental health reasons?
Yeah, and I think why sometimes that term sounds so general, because it does depend on who I'm working with. For example, when I started as a music therapist, I worked a lot with infants all the way up till 3 years old. And a lot of that was just musical play, songs, a lot of hands-on with instruments to help with motor skills, cognitive skills, social skills, that type of thing. Working with adolescents, there's a lot more emotions to work out. So I would use a lot of songwriting, also improvisation, group improvisation, which let's make as much noise as we can using whatever instruments are there. And it really would help teenagers with social skills and then just being able to process their emotions better.
As the mother of 2 teenage boys,
Okay.
I can see a benefit to that. Because especially the boys in general,
Yes.
they just, I mean, we know female brain versus male brain, but they just don't, everything just goes within. And then they just get quiet. Or angry, but they don't necessarily have the tools I think that women have innately to talk through their emotions.
Yes, and socially as well. That's not what they're taught in our society in general.
Well, that's true, too. So,
yeah, it's
yeah.
twofold, isn't it?
Okay, so we talked about music therapy for infants and children, and I'm an absolute advocate because there's so many studies, too, that show that music can also affect the brain and help you do better in school.
Yes.
So for sure, I can see the benefit in infants and even adolescents. So let's talk about adults. How do you use music therapy for older adults?
It's wonderful with memory retrieval. And I think Dr. Oliver Sacks, who is not a music therapist at all, but he has done such a benefit to the music therapy profession in general with all of his research on, again, just looking neurologically at how music just, it taps every part of the brain. And in his work with Alzheimer's patients, you see video after video of somebody who is just sitting very still, looks to be that they're not aware of what's going on around them. And then here comes some live music or some of their favorite recorded music, and they just come to life. I saw that. I had a great Uncle Bill who was very musical. He sang all the time. It was such a big part of his life. He did develop Alzheimer's. And it was the same thing, just seeing it firsthand, where he could just be sitting in a room, Thanksgiving, lots of activity going around, very quiet, and somebody would say something or do something that would trigger a memory, and he would just break into song, and his face would just light up, and it was just beautiful to see.
I've worked in healthcare for a very, very long time, and at Homestead Hospice, they have a whole Nurturing Arts program, and as part of that Nurturing Arts program, they'll have maybe dancers come out or instrument players, guitar, piano, drums, whatever. And time after time after time again, when we bring these folks into either an assisted living facility or a skilled nursing home or even an independent living facility, you'll see folks that are typically withdrawn and don't seem very participatory. And you'll bring them in, you'll start to see them move their hands and maybe click their fingers and smile, even if they're not able to talk or what have you. And just seeing them come to life, it's so rewarding. And we have family members talk about that all the time. You know, I don't think that I've seen him have so much fun. I know that he enjoyed that last hour. Or she got up and in the wheelchair, we were just holding hands and just moving her and just a big smile. And it's just so incredibly rewarding. So if someone, let's just say, is taking care of a loved one who's in the earlier stages of dementia or even middle stages of dementia, it's such a long, difficult journey for a caregiver in the home. How do you see them using your services? Do you bring them to like a group music therapy session or teach them how to use music therapy in the home? How does that work? Do you meet with the caregiver or do you have them bring their loved one?
It could be twofold. I used to do a lot of groups, and that is very beneficial because it does give a chance for people to connect, even if they're not completely 100% cognizant that they're connecting. They are connecting. But more than likely it's to educate It's to give them ideas, to put together a CD or several CDs of favorite music, songs that will bring about memory, or they can engage in reminiscence with music, and using that kind of as a bridge.
And that's just a tool to get them to a place where it might be easier to work on other things, even if we're not talking about dementia patients.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So for one-on-one is what I was asking you. So that they would come to you, or you would go to them? How does that work?
It depends. Everything's kind of depends on the situation.
Okay.
Yeah, they can come to my office. Other times, if it's more difficult transportation-wise, I will do in-home.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And so for someone, I guess I'm just trying to wrap my head around your out-of-the-box specialty, and I'm trying to paint the picture for who would be a great person to come and see you, and then what would that look like? How would you help them? You see what I mean? So is it someone taking care of a Alzheimer's or a dementia patient, or is it more someone going through trauma and you're going to pull music in to help open them up, so then you can bring your other out-of-the-box therapies in there because they're more open to... I don't know. I need to understand a little bit better the picture of how it works.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a specific client just so I can, paint that picture. Somebody comes to mind with trauma. He was mobile enough where he could come to my office, and in his 80s, and had some assistance getting to my office. But there was some onset of dementia, but there was also some trauma. So I was able to address both in that setting, but I actually focused more on the trauma piece. Okay. And having him just very briefly going back to some unpleasant memories and then putting them in present time. And there's a whole process in terms of when you stay emotionally present with somebody who's retelling a traumatic experience, it's very healing and corrective. It sends a signal to the brain that, okay, this is not happening anymore. And there's a lot of ways to do that, very creative ways, through storytelling. We can use film clips, like they're seeing it like a movie or they're reading it like a book. Those types of interventions can be really helpful.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I love music therapy, so we went straight into music therapy, but I think it's just one tool in your kit.
Yes.
So let's talk about the generalization of what it is you do and how you can help. Because here's my issue. I only get this little bit of time every week to try to motivate people to seek the help they need so that they can live their best life. Mm-hmm. And I want to make sure that the folks listening today are motivated to say, I can see how going to someone just like Diane, if they live in Arizona or the Gulf Coast and they're not here, or going to see Diane can help me. And I'm finally going to make that decision because I still have life left to live in me. And we should always be working towards living better for as long as we're here. So I want to paint the picture for them on here's how you're handling it yourself. And here's how it may go if you continue to try to handle it yourself. And here's the repercussions that you might not even be realizing are happening because you're not able to do this alone. But if you come to me, Diane, here's how I can help you. So let's kind of delve into that. And you can use an example.
Yeah, I hear exactly what you're saying. My approach, and I think why traditional therapies, they work, but only to a point, is because traditional therapies really engage that left brain, the rational brain, the part that can look at any situation and go, okay, that makes sense. But then any creative therapist is going to engage the emotional brain, the right brain. That's the part of the brain that sort of needs the update. We can feel like, okay, I understand that this issue is going on. I understand it, so why am I not getting over it? And the reason they're not getting over it or getting through it is that emotional part is still lagging behind. And that's why creative interventions work, because it uses the language of the right brain, the language of the emotional brain. Stories, metaphors, music, experiential experiences in the session. There's a lot of research behind if you have what's called a novel experience in therapy, you will more than likely heal. You will more than likely progress past that stuck place.
And describe a novel experience?
Oh gosh, humor is great.
Okay.
Humor is wonderful, and that can happen in stories. Let me give you an example. Working with clients who have experienced significant trauma, and this may sound a bit odd, but it works. I reach a point in the session where the client is retelling their traumatic experience to me. And they'll tell me I'm staying emotionally present with them by maintaining eye contact. And then I'll say, okay, I'm going to repeat what you just told me, and you tell me if I got it right or got it wrong. And what happens is I start to interject just goofy, off-the-wall scenarios. And the point is to engage the client. And they start laughing. And they could be talking about something very, very traumatic. But just involving that humor, it takes them out of the upsetness, and they have some humor. They begin to laugh because they realize what I'm recalling is just the most ridiculous thing in the world, and it was incorrect.
And what you're doing is you're sort of reprogramming
Yes.
that when I talk about this, I don't have to always break down. Because now my
Yes.
brain is associating it with other emotions, and so now I
Absolutely.
might be more capable of talking about this and getting through it. I love that. So you're like
Absolutely,
making
yeah.
new connections in the brain.
Yes, and they'll never have that same memory that when they walked into my office, that memory was very just intense, emotionally intense. When they walk out, it's changed. They'll never go back to how they retold the story because I broke it up in so many different
Yeah.
places.
Okay.
And so humor is a great way to have that novel experience.
And that's why you really have to shop around when you're picking who you're going to go to help you through. Because I think, number one, just getting people to make that decision. Okay,
Yes.
I'm going
Oh,
to
yes.
seek help. And then what a travesty it is if they go to seek help and maybe it's a little bit more traditional. And I'm a little biased because, I went through a divorce and I thought I'm going to take my kids to counseling. And one of the counselors was fantastic that one of my sons went to. And the other counselor, it was almost boring.
Yes.
Like, tell me, and how did that... And that's why I'm trying to get you to paint your picture, because I
hear
know
you.
there's more to you. And I want people to get the benefit of reconnecting different parts of their brain and getting over it so they can live a great life.
And they can. That's the great thing. And yeah, traditional therapies don't quite set that up.
Honestly, I
You
don't
know.
know that it did much, except that it frustrated me. I sat in on one session, I thought, we're getting nowhere.
Yeah.
We're not connecting. We're not connecting. And when you're talking about kids and teens, or anybody really, I love what you said. I'm going to just do something, throw something out there so that there's an engaged conversation. So that because I really didn't feel like just talking about it was going to help.
Yeah.
I needed tools. I needed homework. I needed action items. I don't want
Yes.
to just sit for an hour and talk.
Right, yeah, yeah. It does good, but only to a point. And after a while, I like to use the analogy of a vinyl record, which I'm showing my age here because, I have a huge vinyl collection. But, it's sort of like when the record is skipping, we're stuck. And we can't just look at the needle and tell it to stop skipping. We have to do something physically to kind of tick that needle up so it can replay the rest of the record. So that's why that talking works, but only to a point, because we can't tell that needle, oh, just stop skipping.
Okay. So we have so much to talk about because I wanted to get that out there to let people know this is not just what you think. You really do. If you had a trauma or you're going through a life experience that's just more than you can handle, it doesn't have to be a trauma. You could be taking care of a dying loved one. That's traumatic,
It
but it's
is,
also
yes.
a journey. So it might not hit you like an accident or a trauma. It's
Yes.
a long journey. But when you're in it and you're living it and you're trying to do it, and so many people I run into try to do it alone for such a long time until they break, someone like you can help them even just bring some positivity into their day to day. You know, and that's how I can see how you could help. But I want to know, because I'm so action oriented, how is them going to see you going to help them in their day to day life? Like, what else do you bring for them to take home with them?
Yeah, they have so many resources, and sometimes we don't realize. It can feel like the resources aren't there, but they're there. And I love telling my clients, and you know, they're feeling depleted, they're feeling frustrated, and
Depleted. That's such a good word. Yeah.
It's like I used to feel
Alive.
Yeah, and I don't anymore. And I love telling them it's there. It may be buried, it may be a little, you know, in the fog, but it's there. And I truly believe that. And I see that session after session. It's there, and just working to lift that and uncover it. Because
I love
we all
that, because
have
you
that.
wrote that here. I can't exactly find it, but it's like self-empowerment, showing them the power they have within. So, and I'm a huge advocate of that, because you can overcome anything when you set your sights on going inside and pulling out the power within.
Yes.
It's work, and you got to be dedicated to it and committed to it. But oh my God, what a feeling when you realize just how strong you are.
Yes, yeah, it's there. It's there. And sometimes I have to say, it doesn't have to be a lot of work, which is the great thing. It can be a symbol that will bring it up. It could be a story that will bring that up. And that's something that the client can always have and use as a resource to remind them, and they instantly just tap into that energy again.
Okay, well, we have so much more to talk about, because I know that you also specialize in hypnotherapy.
Yes.
And we need to talk specifically about depression and anxiety, and how some of the tools that you use in your out-of-the-box therapy sessions can help people going through depression or anxiety. And then I really am very interested in talking about hypnotherapy and maybe some of the examples that you've used to help people with hypnotherapy live their best lives for the rest of their lives. So we do have to
Absolutely.
take a quick break, but we'll be right back. Stay tuned, because we have so much more to talk about.
Hello, I'm Jean Pete, and I welcome you back to our show, Better Living. Better Living is brought to you by the Homestead Hope Foundation and is sponsored by Homestead Hospice, where commitment to education and premier hospice care helps patients and families through life's most important journey.
Thanks for staying with me. I'm Jean Pete, and I am still here with Diane Call, who is with Creative Therapy Services. And she's at 800 Kennesaw Avenue, Suite 170 in Marietta, Georgia, 30060. And if you find that maybe it's a good time for you to reach out and get the help of an expert, maybe you've got a lot on your plate right now, and you feel like you're more robotic in life than actually living life, and you're just not sure why, but you've been trying to take care of yourself and you just can't seem to get yourself out of that funk, I want to implore you we want you to live your best life. So if you think that maybe it's time to reach out and have some out-of-the-box therapies and thinking and just talk to someone, you can get in touch with Diane at Creative Therapy Services at 770-548-4395. That's 770-548-4395. And you can also check out her company at www.creativetherapyservices.net. Did I get that right?
You did.
Okay,
Thank you.
Wonderful. So before the break, we talked a lot about music therapy. I went right into music therapy because I think that is just a fantastic way
Yes.
to reconnect the brain connections and help people work through things. I am a huge fan of adding any kind of music to help people realize what they need to realize to move forward. But there's so much more to what you do. So if someone is going through a long journey that's depleting them. You used the word deplete during the break. Or if they had a sudden trauma, like maybe an accident that's made them into a person that they didn't realize that they had it in them to be, and they don't know how to continue because they're different now. Or what are the different types of traumas? Why don't we start there, and then we can go with how different therapies might help people going through different things.
Sure, yeah. There are definitely two different types of trauma. There's what's called big T and little t trauma. Big T trauma are those just single event episodes. It could be a tragic accident. It could be a physical assault, witnessing a murder. It could be war trauma, that type, big T experiences. Little t trauma is more of that accumulative effect. It could start all the way from childhood, just these very, some might say brief events. Could be a word from a teacher in front of the class that maybe wasn't that complimentary, and words from parents, strangers. It doesn't matter. It's just sort of this accumulative event that unfortunately validates a negative belief. It can reinforce, some people call them limiting beliefs. I am worthless. I am not good enough. It's that type. And research actually shows that it's those little t traumas that are harder for people to work through, because there's such evidence to that person that it's true, but it's really false. You know
I
what
love
I mean?
that. And it's so funny. I'm a little bit of a news geek. Yesterday, I was listening to Oprah, and she was talking about this. And she said, I want you all to know, you are not the person you were told you were.
Yes.
You are the person you believe you are. So change your beliefs if you don't like who you are. Believe what you're made of, and then it will slowly change. And whatever you believe will come true. And she said, growing up, in being born wherever, 60s, 50s, whatever Oprah was born, in Mississippi,
Yeah, I think it was.
as an overweight Black woman, and being told I would never make it in television. If I listened to what I was told the person I was, I never would have gotten here. But no matter what anyone told me, you're too fat to be on TV, you're a Black woman, you're from Mississippi, blah, 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 then I just pushed it out. I believed inside of me, no matter what anybody told me, that this is what I could do. And you are what you believe. And so I love your therapy. That's basically what you just said to me. So we want to reconfigure your brain and get you believing in you and shutting out all the outside influences.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's a lot of resilience there. But what happens with us when we're younger is with brain development, when things happen to us when we're children, we don't have the brain development to understand truly what's happening. So any child is going to personalize any word, any experience as if it's my fault. And so that's how that happens. We begin to carry those false beliefs through time, even as we're growing and achieving, learning, having successes. There can still be that undercurrent of, I'm still not good enough, because at that time when all of that seared into the brain wasn't fully developed. So
then this is great. This is what we need to get to. We're at the crux of the matter. So then how do you come in and help people empower themselves and get back on track? How do you help them get rid of all that craziness and say, this is me? That's the fun part.
Yeah, that is the fun part.
Yeah. And once they do, it is fun for them too, right?
Oh, it is. It is.
No matter what age you are, it's a reawakening, a rebirth.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I can use the gentleman that came into my office. He was 83. Not very mobile. He got assistance and working through a lot of stuff, including what we got to is that he was still holding some little t trauma. And what we did, I did a bit of hypnotherapy with him. We first identified what was going on with him, and he was carrying around this false belief that he was stupid. That was it. It was, I am stupid. And this man throughout his life achieved many successes. So how could somebody, you know what I mean? Yeah.
Find themselves being stupid. Yeah, I don't get it.
Right, exactly.
But what you said,
yeah,
it's planted at that age of childhood where you can't process.
And
so you believe.
Exactly. Yeah, in a way, how could that not have happened given what we know about brain development? It just happens. You know, it happens to all of us. But we just did a little bit of hypnotherapy. I had him close his eyes, and I just said, you know, your mind will scan back to a time that will be advantageous for us to address. I kept it very open because our subconscious mind, our right brain, emotional brain, will always bring up the best memory to address. And he went back to when he was 6 or 7 years old. He was in first grade. And a teacher had asked him to give this long-winded message to another teacher down the hall. And he stepped out into the hallway. He forgot the long-winded message, stood there for a while, came back into the room, told the teacher, yes, I told the other teacher the message. And then it eventually came out that he didn't relay the message. And the teacher kind of berated him. And it was at that moment, it just seared in, well, I must be stupid. But I can even tell by your expression, you hear,
well, I have one son that doesn't realize just how much he's worth. And so as you're telling me this story, I'm thinking, you know, as parents, one of our toughest jobs is always reiterating the most positive, you know, and so no, honey, you're not stupid. You are very, very smart, but you have to put the work in.
Yeah.
So I try to change it, and then, so I just kind of went within myself there while you were talking because they are so impressionable.
Oh yeah,
they are.
Yes.
And it can affect their futures by what we have so much power. It's scary.
Yes, and words.
And no one's perfect. It's okay.
Right? Yeah, yeah. It's life.
Yeah.
You know, and we all have those moments that we carry with us through time. I don't think anybody's immune from that. But what happened was, so we got the memory, and then I had him go in. He was visualizing himself as the adult that he is, and he just had a conversation with his young self. And he pretty much just delivered what I call good news. This is the good news. And not only are you smart, you're intelligent, you're bright, but you have all of these really fun things to look forward to. And he started listing, vacations and jobs and just things that he really enjoyed. And that little boy in the guided visualization and the hypnotherapy got it. And I knew that the session could wind down is when it was clear that little boy, that memory got the update. And he came out of it and he just said, I feel so much lighter. Because it can feel like weight when we're carrying that around. And it's typical that people say, oh, I feel, I have a spring in my step again. And that's just an example of how that can work with trauma.
It sounds like such a simple thing, but it's not something you're going to do by yourself.
Right. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
You have to go through that and have that pulled out of you, and then that reassurance from you.
Yes.
That new voice that they can listen to, and now they believe because now they have someone else saying, no, you're right. I believe in what you believe in now.
Yes.
They were dumb.
Yeah, that teacher was silly. Yeah, she could have delivered the message herself. She could have put the message on a piece of paper. How could she have expected such a young child to remember, just a long-winded message?
But isn't it amazing how you just really never know what it is that's holding you back from your best?
Yes.
And it could be something as little as that, but you're stuck. And so you really have to go and get help to get unstuck. Because what a travesty that would have been if that man had never gone through that exercise.
And what I loved about him, he was 83, and he's like, I'm not done yet.
Because he now believed, and he was excited to use that new perception of himself to do even greater things.
Yes, yeah. And it was wonderful. And even, he was having some cognitive difficulties at that age. But, even with that, there's ways to modify the approach with any age. And he did the work, and it was one of those days where I just left with a big smile on my face.
Yeah, that's great. So let's talk. We haven't talked a lot about relationship therapies, because I know you do children and adolescents, but then you also do family counseling.
I do some, yes. Yeah.
Okay, but that's not what you focus on.
Yeah, that's not my specialty.
Okay.
I do some family work, but yeah, I mostly work individuals. And I would say right now it's trauma that's been the main focus for the last few years. It always seems to come back to trauma.
Yeah.
Whether
it's the big T or the little t.
Exactly.
Okay. So we talked about an example, and I loved your example of someone who had gone through the little t trauma, which is more the progression throughout many years. Now let's talk about a big T trauma and how you can help people through that. An accident, witnessing a trauma, an assault, a loss. It could be a divorce, I'm assuming. It could be a death.
Yeah. That's where storytelling is really impactful. Just for confidentiality's sake, I kind of want to, sort of monitor what I'm saying here so I don't give away too much information. But, I had a client who witnessed a death. And it affected everything, every facet of her life. It just affected. She was not able to function. She could hardly think because that trauma just kept playing in her head, that what she saw, just like a film clip.
I can't imagine. I can't
Oh,
imagine.
I know. Yeah. And, it took some time to get there. It's not something that I would necessarily jump in right away with. But, there's rapport, and I like to do a lot of strengths-based assessment, just trying to find out strengths, because those are resources to work with. So when it felt right to address that memory, we did, and I had her do a bunch of different things. She first told me the memory, and if I ever saw her starting to relive it, I would snap her out of it, what color are my drapes? And then, okay, go back to what you were saying. And then she'd start again. If I'd see her start to go back into the experience, what color are my shoes? Just to try to pull her out and then go back in. So she's not reliving the experience. That's the start. With her, then I had her break it up into book chapters. She was resonating with a book more so than a film. Okay, give me chapter 1. And then we would decide when that was over, give me chapter 2. Give me chapter 3, give me chapter 4. And so we had it then segmented. And then I started mixing it up. Okay, tell me about chapter 2. Now tell me about chapter 4. Tell me about chapter 1. Just mixing it up. Okay, now tell me the book forwards really fast. You have 30 seconds. Tell me backwards. And the one thing that's key with that is that last chapter, chapter 4, that is where, tell me something good that happened after. It could have been a month later, it could have been 6 months later, but that's really key. So that the right brain, the emotional brain is getting, okay, this did happen, but it's over, and there was some good stuff.
And there's still stuff. So
Yes.
life doesn't end at the
Yes.
chapter 4. That I get that.
Absolutely,
That's great.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's just an example and a technique of how to do that. And it's amazing. I can see the emotional intensity to start to decrease. And they can then retell the story without reliving it. And that's where I want to get people, especially with the big T trauma.
And then once they can retell it without reliving it, they're telling it to others, not just in your session, and talking about it and getting it out of the body can help them continue to move forward in life.
Definitely.
Okay.
Definitely, yeah.
I think about that like childbirth. I told everybody I could about it because I needed to get rid of it. It was awful. I'm so sorry.
Are you doing
for
okay
people
with
who haven't
it?
had a baby yet. I'm good with it now. I went back another time, but so anyway. No, but I mean, I remember it was like it was so therapeutic just to get rid of it. It was like getting rid of it. You talk it, you breathe it, it goes into the air.
Yes.
I mean, that might sound silly, but
no, it doesn't. It doesn't.
if you hold it in, it, like you said, it's a weight. And that's a silly example. I mean, of course, I had a baby and I was happy, but any kind of trauma that anybody goes through, if they bury it and don't talk about it, it becomes a weight.
Yes.
And if you talk about it, think about all of that energy that it takes to get those words out, and it's like you're spewing it into the air and letting it go.
And it frees up then so much energy then for other things. Yeah.
To keep moving on. Okay, great. Now, we kind of touched upon it, but we didn't label it. When you said I'd make them snap out of it and ask them the color of the drapes, one of the techniques you use in your therapy is hypnotherapy. So I imagined that they were going through hypnotherapy when you were in those sessions, or I don't know.
Yeah. There's so many different forms of hypnotherapy. What we see on TV is that's all stage hypnosis, that type. It kind of gives hypnotherapy a bad rap in a way.
Yeah, and I want to talk about it because it's not that.
It's not at all. What I like to tell people, and this is very true, we go in and out of that hypnotic state on a daily basis. It can be, getting lost in a really good movie, and all your mind is just totally absorbed in the movie. You forget who's sitting around you. A good book, sometimes, driving to work, all of a sudden you're there. So it's actually a very natural state. And what we do as therapists is we utilize that state with intention and with purpose. Anybody who has experienced hypnotherapy, they're in total control. They know exactly what's going on. It's just that their mind is so focused on the work.
And it's so nice because if you don't go to see you're not going to block off an hour and say, for this hour, I'm going to focus on this part of my life so I can get through it and have a breakthrough. Yeah. So again, folks, if you're listening and you've had a traumatic experience, whether it's a big T trauma like an accident or an assault, or you witnessed a trauma, or like 9/11.
Oh,
Maybe someone went through 9/11, never saw it, moved here to Georgia, and they're still dealing with that. It's in your best interest not to carry that burden.
It doesn't have
and that's
to be
just
carried.
one example. Anything.
Yes.
Or if you had a little T trauma, and we talked about that as little as something someone said to you in second grade for 5 minutes that you could carry through for 80 years.
Yeah.
It's an hour of your life to see how you can work through this and become the best person you are and live your best life for no matter how long your life is. That 83-year-old man, he could have another 20 years left in him.
Yes.
And so please, today's show is about helping you reconnect your brain so that you can get rid of whatever it is that's weighing you down. And it is so empowering. Once you realize you can do that, you can do anything. So whether you're 25, 45, 65, 85, listening today, I would implore you, even just go to the website and check it out. And again, I got to put my glasses on because I'm not 25 or 35 anymore. It's www.creativetherapyservices.net. And if you want to contact Diane, it's 770-548-4395. And she's located at 800 Kennesaw Avenue on Suite 170 in Marietta, Georgia. But if someone doesn't live that side of town. Mm-hmm. Can you shout out some resources
Absolutely.
of where people can go to find out who they could see in their areas,
Absolutely.
websites, or whatever?
Yeah, I have
Associations.
a lot of training in what's called rapid trauma resolution, which is just beautiful work by Dr. John Connolly. There are rapid trauma resolution therapists all throughout the country. So all they would have to do is go to www.cleartrauma.com to look for a practitioner. That would be for trauma. I would also recommend any therapist who does hypnotherapy, acceptance and commitment therapy. There are so many wonderful creative therapists in the...
Yeah, how do they know? Because I want people to... Don't just call a therapist and go see that therapist. Mm-hmm. Call 3 or 4 therapists and meet with them and talk with them and ask them questions. But let's give them the tools. What are the top 3 to 5 questions to ask that's person-centered so they can make a decision on who's best for them? They might not know.
Yeah, I think the word experiential is key.
Okay.
Any therapist who uses the experiential component is engaging the emotions, so that would be a key word, definitely.
So do you practice experiential therapy?
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
that's a great question.
Yeah. I would also, narrative therapy, even play therapy, Sandtray therapy. That is wonderful for families. And it's play, it's engaging the emotions in a different way, kind of outside the family. They're just using the Sandtray. So that would also be very good as well.
Okay. Lasting words, because we never have enough time. What do you want people to know as we leave them today?
That is a good question. It's all there, and it's all inside of you. It's all there, and there just might be some help needed to tap into that again, but never think that it's gone, because it never leaves. It's a part of us that's always present. It never gets hurt. It never gets harmed. It's always there, and it just takes some time to
I love that.
Pull those layers
away. No matter
away.
what you believe right now, you may believe that you're just so broken, you're so far gone. There's a piece of you always that is untouchable.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
so knowing that there's a piece of you that never gets harmed, I love that. Mm-hmm. Then you know you can tap into that and overcome anything.
Absolutely.
So just know, whatever it is that you're going through, you can be empowered to overcome whatever it is that's broken you so that you can live your best life for the rest of your life.
Yes.
All right. Well, Diane, thank you so much for joining me today. Important information. And again, you can reach out to Diane at 770-548-4395 or go to her website at www.creativetherapyservices.net. I'm Jean Pete. Thanks for listening. I'm Jeannie Pete. Thanks for listening. Have a blessed day and week ahead. And listen here, same time next week and every week. Homestead Hope Foundation is your resource for a healthy life. God bless.